So I was really looking forward to Zoolander 2 after the first one. And let me say, dude, this movie sucks. It has been so difficult for me to sit down and record this movie and edit this because I have been watching One Piece and I am in what people consider to be the best arc, and instead of watching that, I'm sitting here fucking talking about a movie that was just horrible. Honestly, like, looking back, this movie doesn't really need to exist. If you take Zoolander as it was and just leave it, it's a cohesive story. I mean, it's not like a very good one, but it's good enough. There is literally no fucking point to this movie. It could have not existed, and Zoolander as a franchise would have just been so much better for it. But fuck, I'm getting ahead of myself. Zoolander 2. What is it about? Okay, so the movie starts with a hooded figure being chased down the streets by people who seemingly want to kill him. His hood eventually comes off and we find out that it's Justin Bieber. For some reason, Justin Bieber ends up running towards Sting's house and knocks and does not get an answer. Ultimately, Justin Bieber ends up getting killed in the dumbest way possible. He gets gunned down by what seems to be a light machine gun rather than whatever handgun they actually used. When the culprits leave him for dead, Justin Bieber pulls out his phone and despite the fact that he was shot like 100 times, somehow manages to take a picture of himself and uploads it online. The face that he decides to make is, no surprise, blue steel. It then cuts to Fashion Interpol and secret agent Valentina Valencia is examining the face Justin Bieber made, and I guess like there's all these pop singers that have died making Zoolander's signature blue steel look. We flash back to Zoolander and we find out that the school center for kids who can't read good that he built at the end of the first movie ended up collapsing 2 days after the events of the movie. Matilda died, Hansel was injured, and eventually Derek ended up losing custody of his son because he couldn't take care of him. Like, he couldn't do like basic parent stuff. So he announces his retirement from modeling and just goes into reclusion. Fast forward a few years and Zoolander is now living in the extreme northern New Jersey, whatever the hell that means. And he gets visited by his good friend Billy Zane, who has apparently come to drop off his Netflix movies. I guess that's what Billy Zane is doing these days. And he also gives him an invitation to the House of Ato's fashion show by the Queen of Haute Couture, Alexandria Atos. Zoolander rejects the invitation because he is a recluse now. Zane convinces him that if he were to gain this job, he could use it as leverage to regain the custody of his son. From here, we go to the uncharted Malibu territories. Here we get to see what has happened to Hansel since his face was disfigured. In typical Hansel fashion, he ends up returning late to dinner and gets in trouble with his orgy. And yes, I said orgy and not partner, because Hansel has a whole orgy as a partner, I guess. His orgy informs him that they are all pregnant and that he's the father. The pregnancy news scares Hansel off and he flees and eventually runs into Billy Zane, who is also dropping off his Netflix movie and at the same time giving him that same invitation he gave Zoolander. Zoolander and Hansel end up meeting at the fashion show after years of not seeing each other. And although at first they're angry at each other, they eventually kind of get over it. And then Hansel reveals his disfigured face to Zoolander, which is really just like a cut on the cheek, but apparently it's revolting to Zoolander. Hansel and Zoolander are surprised that the fashion world has changed so much since they were last in it. One of the head honchos now is a guy called Don Atari, and honestly, Don Atari is probably one of the most unlikable people I have ever heard. He is like the most stereotypical hipster and he's just a headache. Also, there's like the new top model, which is played by Benedict Cumberbatch. It's a non-binary character named All. I understand that All is supposed to be making fun of models like in general, but I think it's kind of messed up that they chose the one obvious non-binary character to be this just cold, emotionless weirdo. Anyway, Zoolander and Hansel end up going on with the runway and are caught off guard when it turns out that this whole runway was to just make fun of the two for being old and lame. And somehow after all that, Alexandria Atos ends up congratulating them for their performance. Alexandria is one of those obnoxious characters that you're just not going to like. I guess they're using her to make fun of how rich people and models have like a weird tendency of mispronouncing words to sound like cultured, I guess.
I want to invite you to be my guests at the most elite fishing event in history.
But it's just like way overblown and just honestly dumb, to be honest. Eventually, Zoolander and Hanzo end up being tracked down by Valentina, who asks them to help Interpol to figure out who's behind all the assassinations. You see, Valentina thinks that Zoolander is the key to figuring out what happened to them because all those pop stars took a picture making his face before they died. Upon showing Zoolander the pictures that the pop stars took, Zoolander gets offended because they are not making the blue steel face. In fact, they are making the aqua vitae face, which is 100% different. It's the same face. 100%. Anyway, after Zoolander tells Valentina that it's a different face, she ends up helping them figure out where Derek Jr. was. It turns out that this whole time Derek Jr. has been residing at a local orphanage in Italy. They find him, but Zoolander is disappointed that his son is now obese. At first, he is disgusted by him, but after running into Matilda's ghost, she asks him to protect their son, which honestly doesn't really convince him. Hanzo still has to come in and give him that last push for him to fully accept his son. Zoolander ends up meeting with the headmaster at the school, who has a striking resemblance to the DJ from the first movie who hypnotized Zoolander. Anyway, Zoolander takes his son around Rome, and Derek Jr. becomes upset at his dad because he was never really there and returns to the orphanage. Hanzo ends up getting an anonymous call that asks him to go to the St. Peter's Basilica at midnight. Zoolander, Valentina, and Hanzo end up going to the church, where they find out that the anonymous call was in fact from Sting. Sting reveals to them the tale about Adam and Eve and Steve. It is a secret that apparently all those pop stars in the beginning died to protect. So apparently, Steve is the common ancestor that all models have, and that Derek Jr. is the closest descendant, and he holds the bloodline to the Fountain of Youth. Basically, whoever's behind all this is planning on using Derek Jr.'s blood to get eternal youth. Zoolander and the crew all return to the orphanage just to find that Derek Jr. is now missing and the headmaster is gone. Knowing now that the DJ from the first movie was behind the kidnapping of Derek Jr., the crew end up assuming that the person behind this is Mugatu, who is locked away in fashion jail. They go to visit him, and Zoolander walks in to talk to him by himself, and Mugatu tricks him into trading places with him so he can escape. Honestly, I would go into detail about this super brilliant plan that he has, but it's so stupid and I really don't want to. Mugatu leaves on a helicopter, and Hanzo somehow stows himself away by jumping on top of the rotor of the helicopter. Valentina gets Zoolander out. Oh, by the way, Valentina was supposed to be like a swimsuit model before all of this, and so I guess she's like a super swimmer. I mean, make that make sense. Hanzo ends up infiltrating the house of Athos. It is here where he sees Mugatu reunite with Alexania and kill Don Atari, which honestly has probably got to be the best part in the whole movie. Hanzo ends up finding Derek Jr. and he's imprisoned. By the way, Mugatu reveals that he has been trying to fatten up Derek Jr. I can't understand how being fatter would affect his blood in any positive way, but I digress. So the ritual Mugatu's planning to do is going to be taking place at an event called the Incredible. So they make their way there, and Derek and Valentina catch up and end up reuniting with Hanzo. They are not at the event itself, but they ended up entering a bathhouse through a rear entrance, and it's here where they witness Derek Jr. at a sacrificial table. It's here where Mugatu and a lot of the world's fashion designers plan to cut out Derek Jr.'s heart and consume the blood. Zoolander, Hanzo, and Valentina end up stopping Mugatu from actually killing Derek Jr. This then causes Mugatu to reveal that his plan is actually to kill the fashion designers as revenge for leaving him imprisoned. Underneath where they're standing, there's like molten lava, so he plans on throwing a bomb down there, leaving them in there to die as he makes his escape. Zoolander asks him why he was brought into this. You know, he was living as a recluse. To which Mugatu responds that,
"My big issue is I hate you."
Zoolander ends up asking him then why did he kill Justin Bieber, to which Mugatu just says that,
"Really? You're asking me why I killed Justin Bieber?"
but that doesn't explain then why he killed all the other pop stars. It just doesn't add up. It's revealed that Alexania is actually Mugatu's other accomplice, Katinka Igaborgovina in disguise. She attacks Valentina, and while all this is going on, Mugatu reveals to Zoolander that he is the reason behind the destruction of Zoolander Center, because apparently he hired a construction crew to build a faulty base, which, you know, doesn't really make sense, because it doesn't matter if the base was faulty or not. It was still made like out of unstable materials, so it was probably bound to break anyways. It's at this point that I'd like to mention that throughout the entire movie, Zoolander has kind of been struggling with his confidence, all because of the death of Matilda and the destruction of the center. So he hasn't really had his luck to rely on. I guess you could say that he lost it. Mugatu drops the bomb, and as it's about to land on the lava, he stops it by finally being able to perform the Magnum. Unfortunately, this isn't enough to stop it, so he asks Hanzo for some help, but he can't do it. Hanzo has also been going through his own struggle throughout the movie, a problem with his own identity because he doesn't know his father. It's here where Sting makes a surprise appearance and tells Hanzo that he's actually his dad, which is somehow enough to give him his own look. But again, that's not enough to stop the bomb and pull it out. So this is where Derek Jr. releases his own look.
El Nino!
And they successfully are able to pull out the explosive and hurl it back at Mugatu and kill him in the process. Derek Jr. ends up forgiving his dad for his mom's death, and Zoolander and Valentina end up confessing their love for each other, and Derek Jr. is okay with this because guess who's also there? It's Matilda's ghost, who gives them her blessing for them to be together. Also, conveniently enough, Mugatu live streamed the whole event, so now everybody likes him again. Isn't it just wonderful how things just work out? By the way, you know how Hanzo was like disfigured? A little earlier in the movie, Mugatu threw a knife at Zoolander, and Zoolander wasn't able to use Magnum to stop it, and it stabbed him in the cheek, leaving him also disfigured. And after Hanzo and Zoolander figure out that people like them again, they decide to jump into the lava, and the lava fixes their scars somehow and doesn't kill them. 6 weeks later, Zoolander and Hanzo are now back in modeling, and Hanzo has gone back with his orgy, and he's now a father of 10. Zoolander and Valentina have had a daughter of their own who also has her own look, and Derek Jr. has now become a model as well. Fortunately, we get a good ending. Anyway, like I said, this movie sucks. This movie is stupid. This movie does not need to exist. If they had left it at Zoolander 1, it would have been like kind of like a cult classic, you know? It's not really good, but it's a fun time. It's a good viewing. Don't watch this movie. Save your time. If for some reason you don't believe me, it's on Amazon Prime. Go knock yourself out. I'm Subtle, and I'm gonna go back and watch One Piece because this movie sucks and it was stupid. See you guys next time. Bye.
El Nino!